Welcome to Boss Radio Live. Again, welcome to Boss Radio Live. I'm your host, NJ. We have a great show coming up. I'm going to tell you about what in a moment, but we have Kim DeYoung with us today. And it's going to be a really interesting show. I can't wait to get into this conversation. And that's coming right up. Share the episode, like us on Facebook, like us on YouTube. It's going to be a great one, guys. It's Boss Radio Live with NJ, your three-dimensional podcast. Baltimore, Maryland. I love my city. Wow. Balancing life, health, relationships, and business is hard.
Father's Day extravaganza event, being held by LCC Lois Button
Come meet me today at the Spirit Fest between 12 and 4. See you there. I want to hear what you have to say. So again, we have Kim DeYoung on the show. She is an author, a choice coach, and an entrepreneur. Kim DeYoung is passionate about supporting others to raise their level of consciousness about the choices they make. She's a choice coach, entrepreneur, and author of the Book of Choice. Drawing on years of experience and research, Kim unveils a fresh approach to decision-making that will transform your way of thinking. In her book, she shares her comprehensive guide and choice mapping process to equip readers with practical strategies to navigate life's complexities, empowering them to make choices that align with their values and aspirations. Kim's deepest desire and passion is supporting others to have meaningful conversations about their choices. Today, we're going to speak about how a choice can truly change your life. And so we're going to get into all of that, but I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation, you guys. So please welcome Kim DeYoung to the show. Hi, Kim.
Hello, thank you. So glad to be here with you.
Yes, and this is just a really interesting topic to me because choice, boy, oh boy, get us in the choices we make can get us in a world of trouble, right?
So true. So true.
So I want to just hop right into it because first, I want to know, how did you even get into advising or talking to people about the choices that they make and how that is important, I should say. Tell us about that.
It was about a decade ago. I mean, this is not something that I aspired to be in my younger days, but I was being interviewed for something approximately 10 years ago. And whatever the question was, I don't even know that I remember the question, but I remember my answer vividly, which was, what happens as we make choices and take actions? How does our life unfold and what becomes possible? And it was after that interview, I just kept turning that question over in my head. I thought, what does happen? And that caused me to go look at a particular choice I had made a few years prior. And I began to map it out visually just to say, like, oh, I made this choice and this happened. I met that person, that opportunity happened, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, from creating this first visual map of a choice I'd made, I showed it to a friend. She wanted one. And next thing you know, in 1 year, 29 people wanted me to explore their choices. And so having gone on this very interesting journey with 29 people, and they were friends, they were family, they were people that I met that I just really enjoyed. And I'd say, would you like to explore a choice? And everybody said yes, because that's just kind of interesting to do. And after about a year, I had just taken in so much information. I felt like I had the best seat at the show, the vantage point that I had of, and at the time we were looking back at choices. So there were lots of issues of shame, forgiveness. Sometimes you make a choice and you're really proud of it. Other times you're not. And I was hearing the gamut. And we were also talking about, what became possible from some of those choices. So in 1 year, I sort of really stepped into that space. And then I realized there was a book to be written about all I was learning and gathering. And, just a few months ago, published my first book, which I'm very proud of, called Choice, which is not only all the things I learned, but it's the stories of other people and their choices that I think are unbelievably relatable to every person reading, because we all make choices, and there's a statistic that we make 35,000 choices a day. Now, and that's kind of from your simplest of what are you wearing and eating to bigger ones, but we all make choices. And no matter who we are in the world, we do make choices. So it's become a really interesting experience for me to get to have the conversations that I do with people, whether they're 20, 50, or 80. It's wonderful.
Wow. So tell me, or explain to me, what is it about making choices with awareness? Because you talk about making choices with awareness.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what you mean when you're saying that.
It's such a great question. It's almost like, think about the opposite. Think about if you were that person, or somebody in your life who is not making a choice with awareness. They're sort of oblivious. They're going about their day. They're doing things, but they're not bringing a thoughtfulness to how they do what they do. Most likely, if that's the case, that person who's not being thoughtful is kind of just being caught up in the tide of life. Things are happening to them, etc. They're not bringing their own awareness to it, versus the flip side is, at any moment, we can all bring greater intentionality to the choices that we make. And that, it takes your life up a notch. There's just a quality of living a more examined life. I was just recently sharing the story of a woman that I'm very dear friends with. She's in her 80s. And she had come to me after having read my book, and she said, Kim, I've never been thoughtful about my choices. My husband made them, other people made them. I just didn't pay attention. And she said, is it too late to begin now? Can I begin to be more thoughtful? And I said, of course, at any day, at any moment, we can become more thoughtful. So it's just such a powerful message, because imagine sharing that with the younger generation who may not know that. Imagine sharing it with somebody who has not been thoughtful, and now they can make a shift. It's just a very powerful message.
I think so too, especially looking at what you said about, did you say 35,000 choices a day?
Yes.
Yeah, that is amazing. Because of course, I don't even think we think, which is where the awareness comes in. We don't think about it. So wow, that is really a great point. And it almost puts me in the mind of it's funny I said in the mind, but mindfulness, just that kind of self-awareness, kind of checking in with yourself. I think it kind of really goes along with that, because sometimes we make choices, like you said, because kind of other people, we're influenced in our choices. So can we talk about that for a second? Like, how can we be less influenced by things on the outside, and more so through ourself or our feelings, or our desires, or the things that we really want for ourselves, to concentrate on that a little more, and not be so influenced by the outside.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what your question. It's something we all are challenged by. And imagine it could happen two ways. Like, you might have a choice you need to make, and you might ask your friends, your family, your kid, whatever, and you're getting feedback, and you're listening, but then that no matter what has been told to you, like, it's going to come through your filter, and it's going to be what you want for you. Now, for you to be in that space, it takes a certain level of confidence and trust in yourself to say, I'm taking information in from others, but I know what's best for me. And because I know what's best for me, I'm going to listen, but I'm also going to get quiet with myself, so I decide what I need to do. That's one example. Secondarily, we can all have those pushy people in our life who think they know best, who kind of want to, you know them, you're smiling. We've all had those people, and they want to tell us what to do. Think about the parent telling the child, there's the parent thinking they know best for the child. They're going to tell them what they should do. And the kid is caught. They might not agree. They might not have the confidence. They might, all of those things. So it really is that challenge to build your own confidence. And that only comes with time and experience. I mean, where do we get confidence? From practice. So at any point, no matter where your age is, if you feel like you have not been making choices with confidence, or trusting yourself and depending too much on others, like, take some baby steps. Maybe experiment with some smaller choices that the results aren't such a big deal, depending on where you go. But just, I think building your own muscle of confidence, I think, is a really key thing.
And you hit on this choice mapping, which I think is very interesting. So can we talk a little bit more about that and what that even means?
Yes. Choice mapping. So I'll take you back to how it began, a little bit of what it is, and then why it is so powerful. So when I happen to be a visual learner, and I enjoy seeing things visually. So, back 10 years ago, when I was looking at this particular choice, what I was observing was, I could see that I had made a choice, and from the choice, I'd met people and opportunities and experience, and things had come to it, but I couldn't make sense of it in my head until I started to map it out on paper. And that was the beginning of me seeing, wait, there is something really powerful to mapping the details of a choice, and very different than journaling. So if you are someone who has been a journaler and likes to write things down, there's nothing wrong with that. But one of the things that happens when we journal, we tend to write, and then you put your journal away and you forget about it. And versus, one of the benefits of mapping is that it's really a question and answer dialogue with yourself. So let's imagine you are saying to yourself, I really want to make a choice to leave my job. Let's just imagine that. And you want to ask yourself a series of questions, like, why does that choice matter to me? And you begin to have a Q&A with yourself, capturing the details. You ask your question, you have an answer. But there's shorter answers versus the more written out conversation of a journal. Then you want to ask yourself, okay, I know why that choice matters to me. What could get in my way? What fears or limiting beliefs or stuff is going to get in my way? And again, capturing it, noting it, because when you write it down, you may think something is going to get in your way. And then when you write it down, you're thinking, that's not really that big a deal. I'm not going to let that get in the way of that choice that really matters to me. Or some things may. You may have some legitimate fears or beliefs that you have to work through. You also really want to think about what's possible if I make that choice. That's the part that gets you excited. What are all the things that could come into my world if I left that job and, I found something new? When I make more money, have greater impact on the world? You could begin to think that way. And what's so exciting about that is often the thing that excites you can somehow get you through some of the fears that you have. So not to say that you don't have the fears, but if that thing on the other side feels so good, you might pull yourself through. And then the final component of mapping is really, what actions are you going to take? Because a choice without action is a daydream. I mean, it really is. So unless you're taking action on it, nothing is really happening. And something I just love teaching people about is, it's one thing to make a choice, but what happens when we take action with the choices that we make is that momentum starts to happen, like synchronicities start to happen because you are moving forth on your choice. You get the random phone call, something shows up in your Instagram feed, a friend has a conversation. And if you follow that, there's sort of a richness that happens in your life. And the way that I teach mapping, it teaches you kind of how to have an awareness of all of that. So there's a richness to your life. There's a thoughtfulness and intentionality. It's very powerful.
Wow. And I mean, this is a whole process. And I'm sitting here thinking, like you said, we make a lot of choices, but definitely for the larger choices that we have to make, this is or would be so beneficial for us to just give that much thought to it.
I feel very fortunate because when I came up with this concept and fine-tuned it, I went back through my life and I began looking at, the key choices I'd made, probably starting at 20, really to understand information about myself. So on the one hand, I was using maps to look backward, but then they also become a really positive tool to look forward. Like, what are the choices you are making that matter? And they may be professional choices or personal choices or choices involving relationships with others. And what are you doing? And just bringing, again, that element of thoughtfulness. Really, it's almost like you're becoming your own coach. That's really the key. The map affords you the ability to sit for a little bit of time, to have that question and answer dialogue, to capture some great information that means something to you on one piece of paper that then supports you to move forward with what you want. It's really great.
Wow. So you hit on some of these, I believe, but can you talk to us about what you would consider would be meaningful choices? And I know it's like the big ones are my profession, if I'm going to buy this house or not,
Yes.
large things like that. But what else would you consider meaningful?
It can be the choice to start or end a relationship, the choice to start or end a job. Say you're a corporate person and you're kind of you want to do something entrepreneurially. I mean, that's a very big choice. Or, maybe you're in your job and maybe you've been slacking and, you're going to make the choice to reinvigorate yourself and show up better. Look, all of us with COVID, our habits have gotten, we're working from home. Maybe our boundaries aren't as strong in our home. And so you are making a choice to have stronger boundaries with the way you work, with the life you lead, whether it's choosing to put your computer away at 6 o'clock and stop and be with your family and not, look, we've all done it. We're on our computers early in the morning, late at night. What does it mean to make a choice to set that boundary? What does it mean to make a choice about the health you want to bring into your life, the way that you're living, the way that you're eating? Choices. Let's imagine, there's somebody in your life and you miss them and they've fallen by the wayside and you are making a choice to reconnect. And or you're making a choice that there's somebody in your life and it is not healthy and you are making the choice to end that, to stop it. I mean, it doesn't stop. Like the choices are so many. You may be making the choice to work with a coach or a therapist. You might be making the choice to bring a new creative venture into your life. Maybe you want art or music or something. All of these are just you knowing what you need for you and then making the choice to make it happen.
Wow. And those are some really great ones that you kind of called out, that some of them may not even seem that important, but I think we really underestimate the things that will bring us quality of life. Because,
Yes.
a lot of people are just kind of existing and going about their day to day. And I know even me, I've literally listened to a person and asked them, like, are you happy? Like, are you happy? And sometimes you do need to consider, am I happy? Am I making choices that are actually making me happy?
Yeah.
Um, so I think those are some excellent examples. And you would think that, of course, we would make these decisions to bring joy and happiness into our life all of the time, but sometimes we do not.
We do not.
So, what do you think causes that? What are kind of the obstacles and things that keep us from making these choices that would be best for us?
Again, we're complex beings. We have a lot on our plate. You may have issues going on with you might be in that sandwich generation. You've got, issues with your kids and issues with your parents. And, there's noise in your life and, you're running around doing that you haven't necessarily had the time to just focus on you. That happens. And there are seasons of that in our life. There may be times, if you are a young parent, for example, your life is probably really crazy and you might not have the time to focus on you, to be more thoughtful. Maybe you're an empty nester and you have a bit more time, but then now you've got a parent who's ill and needing you. And now you're just pulled in that, there's life happens. However, I think with awareness and thoughtfulness, even if you have so many things externally pulling at you, it could be, I am making the choice that for an hour a day, I focus on me. I don't listen to anybody, whatever that means. And that may not always be easy, but those are the ways that we can kind of support and take care of ourselves, because if we don't do it for ourselves, nobody is going to come in and do it for us. That is a truth. So I think awareness is just so important in general. I've used the word, numerous times in this conversation, but I think when your life is not what you want it to be, it's really an opportunity for you to look at yourself and say, what's going on? What choices do I need to make so that my life is in greater alignment? To be honest with yourself, I am not happy at the moment. I am not in partnership the way I want. I don't like my job. My health feels bad, whatever the things are. And I choose to take care of it. It's sometimes just accepting, like, wait, I don't have to, I'm not a victim to all this stuff in my life. I want to take charge so that I feel better. Look, we've all sat in victim. We blame, we think things are crappy in our life because of external stuff, things we've done, things that happened, whatever our past was. And there's truth. And there's also the opportunity to say, I don't want to be a victim to that stuff. Like, what does that take? And if that means you need the support of a therapist or a coach, what does it take to find that so that you get the help to be the best person that you want to be? I mean, that's really what it boils down to. And here's the thing I've seen. I meet a lot of people who just don't care. They don't want to be. It's not their priority. What's interesting, not making a choice is actually making a choice. So not choosing to be who you want to be, you're choosing to stay in that place and kind of accepting it. And, or maybe there are people in your life where they're not making choices that you believe in, that you might make differently for them if you were them, but you're not. And at some point we have to allow those in our life that might be living a life that we don't agree with. It's your choice. I can't fix it for you. And that's a reality.
And you kind of hit on this earlier, but you were talking about maybe, if you're having feelings of guilt or maybe remorsefulness about these, decisions that you may have made without thinking them through.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about how we can have more grace for ourselves when we, make these choices that don't always go too well or align?
Yeah, I think, look, I would guarantee that there's not a person listening to this podcast that has not made a choice that they're not proud of. that where they said or did something that they wish they didn't do. We all have done it. So now it becomes a question of how much of a weight does how you acted affect you now? And if appropriate, can you apologize to that person if that's appropriate? And or can you forgive yourself for having been an imperfect person at a time? I don't think any of us sets out to make bad choices. I don't think anyone wakes up and says, I'm really going to screw things up today. I just want to make a mess of my life. I don't think we wake up and do that. Yet we do. And so to accept that, look, if you look back X amount of years at something that you're not proud of, if it's appropriate, number one, to apologize. But if not, how could you just forgive yourself for being who you were so that doesn't become this baggage for yourself? I was sharing the story recently. I heard of a story of an 18-year-old boy who plagiarized a paper and was expelled. Now, this is obviously a stupid choice that this kid made. But you could imagine if he sits in this 18-year-old space and he never addresses what he did, never apologizes, never makes amends, never gets to the bottom of it, he's going to carry that till 50. And imagine the quality of his life versus if there are positive influence adults who can say, look, you made a bad mistake. You did something dumb. How do you not let that trail you into the rest of your life so that you are now the 50-year-old with the big noose around your neck having done a dumb thing? So there's an element of forgiveness and dealing with the shame we may feel for a bad choice. And often shame is released when you admit it. So to even have the courage, whomever that might be, to say, you know what, I did something and I'm embarrassed. The choice I made was a bad choice and I feel awful and I'm ashamed and I hurt somebody and I hurt myself and I wish I didn't do it. To share that is so powerful in whatever way. And often it's rarely as bad when you say it as you feared it would be before you said it.
And I think that's I used to think of this thing as cliche when people would be talking about, oh, be your authentic, self, and and that it was kind of a cliche word, but when you think about it, I mean, in reality, we do need to be very authentic and real with ourselves. And I think in order to do any of this that you've been talking about today, to really examine our choices, to even examine, like you were saying, the choices we've already made, and looking at all of the consequences or resulting things that kind of happen and consider those things, but also, as you mentioned, forgiving ourselves, maybe even forgiving others. If they pushed us to make choices, we might be resentful. All of that, we really have to come to a place where we're just willing to meet things kind of head on and say, hey, let's deal in reality. You really do need to be your authentic self, in a way. So it's not really cliche.
Well, and think how powerful what you're describing is for a parent to a child. I'm sure many of us have had circumstances of, I told you so, you shouldn't have done that thing. Well, in theory, the choices that our kids make are their lessons to learn. They need to make them. And we're not being of service to our kids, first of all, if we're micromanaging their choices, but if we're berating them for a choice that maybe didn't pan out, that's their thing. And I have 3 kids in their early 20s, and they've been a part of this with me since they're teens. So they're used to this language. But one of the things I'll often say to them is, I'm not there to make their choice. I'm there as a parent to support them, to talk about the pros and the cons. Ultimately, it is their choice. And ultimately, they need to see the ramifications of that choice so that they can grow from it. I mean, that's just the truth. Whether, again, bad choice, good choice, they need to see. I had a very important boss in my 20s, and I had a particular decision to make, and I didn't feel like I knew enough to make it. And he said, you've got to make it today. You've got to make it today with what you know today. And then tomorrow you will take what you had then, et cetera, and you'll add that to the mix. And that was by far the best advice I've ever received. I don't think I knew it when he said it to me in my 20s, but in hindsight, I thought, my God, he gave me the confidence to make decisions quickly, to realize like all we can do is make the best choice in the moment with what we have. And then tomorrow we've got a little more information to make our future choices. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yes. Very good information. And just talk to us quickly about the book, the book of choice. What will people get when they read? I'm assuming everything you just talked about they can get in this book, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, in a of looking at your choices thoughtfully, again, those you did make, those you will make, it teaches you how to use the mapping process, if that's something interesting to you, how to bring that level of awareness. I would choice is best reality and awareness to their choices. It's up to this. So really, I would say at the heart of the book of choice, it's learning how to ask yourself really good questions as you are on your choice making journey.
Speaking of that, you have a link where people can, ask questions. There are 5 questions. So I thought that was really interesting. So can you talk quickly about that? Or is this kind of what you are talking about right now? And I'm going to show that.
Well, essentially, when you begin any map or look at any choice, it's helpful to ask yourself 5 questions. And in the link that you just shared at choicequestions.com, you can get this guide that I put together for you that takes you a little bit more in depth into the questions. And of course, in the book, it goes even more. But gather that and use those questions as a place to get started. And I would say do it for a bigger choice that you're thinking about, something that really has a bit of weight for you.
Awesome. So you guys, you see that link, take it. This can be your first step to really examining your choices, and then of course get the book as well. But would you say this would be, the best first step people can take, or do you have some more advice about, just that first step that people can make, to examine their choices?
This is definitely, this guide, the choice questions, is a great guide. Something else that they might want to experiment with is taking my quiz, which will help them to understand their decision-making style. And so they'll answer about 14 questions, and then it will let them know their style. And from there, you'll kind of understand the strengths of your decision-making style, as well as your opportunities for growth and improvement.
Okay. And is the quiz in the book?
They can go to thechoicequiz.com and they can get that link. Thechoicequiz.com will take them there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kim. This has been really, really great. Yes, got a lot of great information, and I think really just a greater understanding of how looking at our choices and really examining them can be so helpful to us. Always better to make informed decisions and choices in our life, definitely. Yeah. So thank you for that.
You are so welcome. So welcome.
As always, guys, it has been a great episode. I thank my guest today, Miss Kim DeYoung, coming to us and talking about choices and how we make them. So this has been a really great episode. As always, you can catch the show every second and fourth Friday at 6:00 p.m. on YouTube, on Facebook. And also, you guys, make sure you share this episode, because I think this was a really, really great one about how we can make better and more informed choices. As always, guys, I'll see you the next time. And until then, stay boss.